guys, let's end up with our usual segment. We've got some fan questions, some of which have come via email, some of which have come in the YouTube chat and other areas. So let's try and get to some if we can here. Let's start with there was one, I believe it was from Aaron in the YouTube chat. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but it has to do with Rey Maualuga. If he says, "Hey guys, with the release of Rey Maualuga, I'd like to know in your opinions if the Bengals could go back in time, should they still draft Rey Maualuga or choose someone else?" Connor, I am going to put you on the spot right there. Go for it.
Okay, so if you look back, Rey Maualuga drafted in 2009, right? With the where is it? He got picked with the 38th overall selection. So my answer is going to be no. And I think a lot of people are going to look back at, okay, well, guys like Jarius Byrd, Connor Barwin, Max Unger, LaShawn McCoy, William Moore, Luis Vazquez, Mike Wallace, Henry Melton, TJ Lang, Glover Quinn. That's like 10, and then a couple more, Pro Bowlers. So that's like 10 plus Pro Bowlers that got drafted behind, Rey Maualuga. So hindsight's 2020, of course, no, we should have taken LaShawn McCoy because the Bengals totally should have known that LaShawn McCoy was going to become this playmaker. No, my reason is because, with a 47th overall pick, which was, 9 picks later, the Oakland Raiders selected a safety by the name of Michael Mitchell, who ended up making his way to Carolina and then to Pittsburgh, where, now he's a member of the Steelers and is a player that I don't like. But, maybe if the Bengals picked Mike Mitchell instead, I'd like him, and he'd be, making a couple plays left and right. And I mean, I'm just kidding. That's my April Fool's joke. The Bengals definitely made the right choice with Maualuga. It's easy to say hindsight's 2020, but there were a lot of Pro Bowlers behind him, 2 of which played for the Bengals. I think Kevin Huber and Cedric Pearman. And Rey Maualuga had a good career. He played in Cincinnati for 7, 8
years,
like a while, 2009 to 2017. I can't even do math. However long that is, 8 years or whatever, it's 9 years maybe. He had a good career, and it's easy to say hindsight's. It's easy to make these claims that we should have taken this guy when hindsight's 2020. But at the time, the linebacker probably felt like the biggest need. I don't remember, and it just made sense. And for who he was, the Bengals got a pretty good value with him.
I remember being pretty ecstatic with the pick, Scott, and I hope Connor didn't steal too much of your thunder on this. I know you had a specific take on it, but I remember being pretty psyched about the pick because I'd seen a lot of Rey Maualuga at USC. It was interesting to me that year that he was of their major linebackers, he was the last one taken with Clay Matthews and Brian Cushing going in front of him. Those 2 made Pro Bowls. Maualuga never did. But what are your thoughts on the question from Aaron Siegel here about Maualuga and if they could kind of go in the old DeLorean and turn back the clock?
Well, the thing for me, my take is the guy who I would pick is the guy who I wanted them to pick instead of Maualuga. Going back, I remember following that draft. I remember when they made the pick being kind of disappointed. So I had an opposite reaction as you did, Anthony.
Interesting.
The player who I wanted them to take at the time and would still like to see them take, if I could go back and change it, was Max Unger. Because they are a team that struggled blocking. They struggled in the middle of the line. They have struggled at center for whoever, since forever. He was, from what I recall, the top-rated center, had fallen into the second round. This is the perfect storm. They desperately need a center. This guy is rated really high. He is falling in their laps. This is going to be wonderful. They're going to go pick him, finally address the middle of the line. They haven't taken a guard or center in the draft in forever, and they took Rey Maualuga. So I was not very happy with that decision. I wasn't that high on him. I remember going to camp that year, seeing a ton of number 58 jerseys. A lot of the fans are really high on him. I guess I didn't see what the excitement was. But as a fan, I hoped it would work out. And I also figured, we already had Dhani Jones in the middle, who I thought was a solid pickup from the Giants. And I think Maluga had to play, I think it was the weak side for a few years, and then until he finally got in the middle because he couldn't unseat Jones. So, yeah, I mean, going back, I think I go back and pick a guy who I wasn't high on at the time. So I'm just going to stick with Unger because that was a guy who I wanted at the time. And, yeah, I think hindsight, it would have been nice to see that pick made.
Yeah, and there were a lot of good players to kind of come out of that draft. The Bengals got some good ones. Andre Smith finally molded into one. There's B.J. Raji, Brian Arakpo, Malcolm Jenkins, Brian Cushing, Jeremy Maclin. Alex Mack was another center. You mentioned Max Unger. Alex Mack was a guy. Percy Harvin. I mean, these are all guys who made the Pro Bowl. It was an interesting one as well. Local kid who went to Louisville was the center. Eric Wood, drafted at the end of the first round, a center. Pretty good player for the Bills there. Another good one. And then of course a guy they brought in for a recent meeting, and he went just it looks like about 8 picks later or so. Connor Barwin out of Cincinnati, the defensive end. That was another guy a lot of diehard Bengals fans wanted because of his ties to UC and his productivity. And he ended up having a pretty good career, and is now signed with the Rams. And that's it kind of is what it is. But the Bengals landed Maluga, and that's who they got at the top of the second round. Some people thought he might be a first-round pick that year. Didn't happen, and but they did get 8 productive years out of him. Well, for the most part, 8 productive years. But was a big piece of a defense that was perennially ranked in the top 10, especially under Mike Zimmer. So good question from Aaron there. Let's go on to another kind of fun one from Waldo. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but especially with the NFL's change to the those color rush uniforms, which last year when we saw on Thursday night when the Bengals beat the Dolphins, we saw the Bengals kind of in those white and black jerseys, which I thought were pretty sleek, and still their orange and black helmets, which I think most Bengals fans absolutely love the orange and black helmet. But it kind of clashed a little bit with the jerseys. But Waldo asked, "Hey guys, just a quick question. With the proposal the Eagles had of the helmets, would you like the White Tiger Bengals helmets?" Obviously there's different uniform combinations and all of that. Scott, what do you think about changing the helmets at least once, maybe twice a year to that White Tiger look? And maybe matching not only the color rush, but maybe just kind of mixing it up with the other uniforms they have.
I'm a fan of it, and although my answer is probably going to be kind of off, my reasoning might be off the wall. The reason I'm a fan of it is, from what I recall, and this is without doing any research ahead of time, so I could be way off on this. From what I remember, the reason the Bengals have the name the Bengals is because the Cincinnati Zoo had a live birth of a Bengal tiger cub in captivity, or whatever. I think they're called cubs. I could be wrong on that. But they had, I think it was the first one, in the U.S. where they had a baby Bengal tiger born. And from what I thought, for some reason, I'm thinking it was a Siberian tiger, and I could be totally wrong, or maybe they had a Siberian tiger at the zoo at one time. And those are the color of the Siberian tigers are black and white. So I think it'd be kind of cool if that's how the team got its name. I could be wrong on how they got their name. Obviously, if it's Bengal tiger, not Siberian tiger, it probably wasn't Siberian. So I may have my history all messed up. But I thought they looked really cool. I wasn't a fan of I don't know why they had the little orange stripe in there. I think I'd prefer just like the solid black and white like we saw in a lot of the CGI pictures. But I like the idea. I think it's kind of a cool look. I mean, you see it in a lot of other sports where teams go with these alternate jerseys. I don't know if I'd be a fan of doing the Oregon Ducks thing where we have like 20 different versions, where we maybe have we have more jerseys in games. But, I think a second jersey would be kind of cool, or a second helmet. You know, if it's something like that, I thought it was a kind of cool look. I think some of the fans were kind of hesitant when they saw the photo, but I think after the game, a lot of fans were like, yeah, that was really cool. I'd like to see that more often.
I like the Color Rush uniforms. It's, you know, obviously, selfishly speaking, one of the things that drew me as a fan to the team is their colors, their looks, and their helmets. You know, some people around the NFL think they have some of the ugliest uniforms. I think they're one of the cooler ones, to be honest with you, especially the helmets. Very unique. And Scott, you know, you may very well be right. From what I understand, there's Siberian Tigers that are orange and black. There are Bengal Tigers that are orange and black. I don't exactly, you know, I'm not a you know, zoologist, but I don't exactly know how the white tigers come about, but from what I know, they're just kind of called white tigers. But they could be a specific breed of Siberian tiger, Bengal tiger. But you know, to me, the thing is that you know, they're the Bengals, they're orange and black. I like that. There's one thing that, and Connor, I'll get to you in a second. There's one thing that I did like, and I'll put the link in our YouTube chat. Is a kind of a different look on the orange and black helmet that could be a cool mix up. It's basically reversing the stripes of the helmet. So you know, it's mostly an orange helmet with kind of the thin black stripes. There's kind of more of the thicker black stripes that takes up most of the helmet, and the orange stripes are a little less prominent. I would like to see that kind of mixed in. I do like the idea of maybe having a white and black helmet with those Color Rush uniforms, but you know, white and black is kind of almost the absence of color, so it kind of takes away from the Color Rush theme. Connor, what do you think?
I like the idea of, you know, the all white and black Color Rush. To be honest, I really didn't mind the orange helmets. I thought that was kind of cool. The white and black, I think, would have been kind of overkill, but I think a lot of people probably disagree with me there. And I saw this in the chat. People are talking that the Bengals should bring back 1980s uniforms. I mean, and that'd be cool. I think to be honest, I think the Bengals need uniform upgrades. I think their helmets are probably top in the league. Their jersey and their pants, I'm not a big fan of. But I think what would be awesome the 1980s, like with the orange helmets with Bengals on the side. I think that'd be sick. And just having that through, I think the Bengals need like their. It's not because the Bengals just don't do that, and in their defense, the league is so like. The league is so hard in terms of like they just make it so hard for teams to do stuff like that. But I think it'd be really, really cool to see the Bengals wear throwback uniforms just like once a year or something like that. And those would definitely entail you know, a throwback helmet, which I would prefer the throwback uniforms with the throwback helmet, and then the Color Rush uniform with the current helmet versus the Color Rush uniform with the Color Rush helmet, and then like a throwback uniform with the current Bengals helmet. It'd be really cool. I do, though, on that note, I think the Bengals, like I said, I think it'd be awesome for them to do a uniform upgrade at some point. I don't like the stripes on the side of the jerseys really bother me. I think they need to get a little fresher, or you know, something a little more like old fashioned, like a lot of teams have done, where it's very simple. The helmets are awesome, but the uniforms I think could upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, they did upgrade him a few years back, you know, and some people like some people prefer the leaping tiger, some people prefer the bee, some people prefer the tiger face. Personally speaking, I like the tiger face. Obviously, it's not something I want to see on their helmets. I like the helmets the way they are, but
for sure,
yeah. But you know, I think they could get a little creative. You know, mix and match your uniforms a little bit. But cool question from Waldo. Just kind of, you know, in such a couple of months of seriousness with the Bengals and their news and what they've done, it's kind of a nice refreshing look at what they could do in terms of being kind of creative. And you know, some of this stuff you guys mentioned Oregon, University of Oregon. You know, Yeah, that's way overkill, but kind of getting creative, especially when you've got younger guys on the team and showing this kind of cool way of mixing and matching uniforms and kind of looking fresh and cool and unique. That guys kind of get hyped up for that, and it could be something they look at, especially since they're such a conservative kind of old school driven football team. But thanks to Waldo for that question. Guys, we've got a couple more. I received an email from Stephen Vovak, and Stephen said some kind words. He loves the show, he said, and I greatly appreciated it. He wrote me a long email, and there's a lot of questions, a lot of stuff to digest in it. We can't get to it all tonight, but one of the top things he said was, with today's depth chart, what are the most obvious holes in the Bengals roster as it currently stands? And I think it's a pertinent question since we had Joe Goodberry on earlier. We talked about the draft, the 11 picks they have, what they have and haven't done in free agency. So, Scott, I'll start with you. As this team currently stands and as they prep for the draft, what are their biggest roster holes that the team is currently looking at?
I think there's obviously many ways we can go at this, and I think we could spend hours probably going over every single, I think almost every position, unless they have a Atkins or a Green as a whole. But I'm going to focus on two of them. One of them is offensive line, specifically offensive tackle. I am very optimistic that Andre Smith is going to be able to replace Zeitler, maybe not at his level, but at something comparable. And I'm hoping that Bowling comes back to his level now that he should be fully healed from the injury that was kind of nagging him all last year. Bodine seemed to take a few steps forward last year. Hopefully, he won't be any worse. But then you have left tackle, right tackle, which I think are the two big ones. We struggled at right tackle mightily. Winston's not getting any younger. You have to hope Ogbuehi and Fisher, someone can step up. Obviously, Whitworth's gone. So to me, that's probably the biggest hole, is what are we going to do there? And right now it's basically, just hopeful optimism that someone can take a huge step up and be productive. The other position I'm going to throw out is kicker, because I personally don't see, Nugent struggled forever. He had all sorts of misses. He started missing extra points left and right after missing field goals for the last 4 or 5 years. Bullock is marginally better, if that, but and I know a lot of people are saying, we need to draft Zane Gonzalez. Well, there's probably 28 teams that would probably be happy to draft Zane Gonzalez, so there's no guarantee we're going to get him, even if we'd plan on going as high as the 4th or 5th round. No one expected Aguayo to go in the 2nd round when Tampa Bay took him last year, so there's no guarantee we're getting Zane Gonzalez. And if we don't get him, okay, you're probably looking at Bullock and the kid from LSU who's never kicked a field goal in college or the pros, battling it out. So I think kicker is a big hole, because with Bullock, I think we're probably looking at more of the same at that position. So I'd probably say those are the two biggest holes that I would see. And at some point you could argue, we probably have as many holes as the Michigan Interstate. And yeah, we do. But those would be the two biggest. Those are the potholes that are so big that they would swallow your car, I think.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree. I'll kick it over to Connor, who looks like he's having a little blackout there. I don't know what's going on there, buddy. But
yeah, my room's lights don't work.
Yeah, maybe pay your electric bill and get going with it.
Yeah, I'm a blogger, man. But I think, yeah, I think the team's biggest holes are definitely defensive end. I think Joe Goodberry said it well. Even if it's just a rotational standpoint, if you think Michael Johnson's a starter, okay, well, all you have behind him and Dunlap right now are Will Clark and Wallace Gilberry. It doesn't make sense that the Bengals would go into the season with those 4 guys, more so than any other position, I would say, on the roster by a long shot. People are going to say receiver's a big need. I don't think it is. I do think another big need would be running back, not necessarily for, it's just going to be a hole that the Bengals fill in the draft at some point. And, hopefully that guy can be a capable player. But I think you need a guy who can play special teams like Rex Burkhead did for so long, or for like the 4 years he was here. But you want a guy who can eventually replace Cedric Pearman as that the punt protector and kind of just the ace in special teams. And Burkhead seemed like he was going to be that guy, but now that he's gone, you need a guy to fill Burkhead's role in special teams. And it's kind of it's like an underrated need, but it really it's something that the Bengals need to look at. And then one more need, I guess I'll go something on offense. You need a left tackle at some point. Cedric Ogbuehi, he's there. He's going to be the guy, whether you like him or not. But even if you look at the roster, okay, well, who's backing him up there? Eric Winston? No, probably not, because he's playing right tackle. Jake Fisher? Well, then who's playing right tackle? So you need another offensive tackle for sure. But I would specify left tackle as a guy who, I don't know, maybe not so much a developmental player, but more so a guy sure bet to be solid, which isn't really what you would, I guess, be looking for in a draft, because you want all these high profile, high ceiling type of guys, but maybe a guy who could become the next Anthony Collins for the Bengals.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with you guys. I'm gonna go with my boy K Rhodes in the YouTube chat room. K Rhodes, I see you, buddy. I see you. A wide receiver to stretch the field opposite of AJ Green. And granted, the team, that's what he wrote, by the way. I don't mean to plagiarize all of his words without giving him credit, but I agree with him. And whether it's John Ross in the draft, whether it's Corey Davis, whether it's Mike Williams, you heard earlier from Joe Goodberry, his take on Corey Davis and John Ross versus Mike Williams. Somebody with big speed, somebody that can really bring excitement to this offense. I've said this over the past couple of weeks on this show now. If you look at when AJ Green went down, when Tyler Eifert was out of the offense towards the end of this last year, and for Eifert's situation towards the beginning of the year, you see that defenses were not giving them any kind of respect for a deep ball. Everything was underneath. Everything was yards after the catch, and most of it was a very boring vanilla offense. Some of that is on Ken Zampese. Some of that is on attrition of his personnel, his star personnel players on that side of the ball. But at some point, you got to have guys that can do things if one of those guys go down again. And, people can say what they want about Marvin Jones, but he was a good complementary weapon to AJ Green. And the Bengals need another player like that, I think. We talked earlier about how the defense seemed to be playing pretty well towards the end of last year and giving up minimal points. So it seems as if the team kind of needs to get a little more explosive on offense and have another couple of players who are long-term, signed long-term beyond AJ Green, who's now approaching 30, and Brandon LaFell, who is over 30 years old, and are both under contract now. So, I think that's one of the needs. I definitely don't disagree with either of you guys as well. Pass rusher, I think even a rotational one is something they should look at too. But that is our take on that question. Appreciate it. We're going to get out of here. Before I do want to say a thank you to Joe Cook, who sent me an email. It was more of a comment email on AJ McCarron trade, so it's not really a question for us to answer, but really appreciate the thoughts that he put into it. And he tunes into Cincy Jungle and this program.